part of our ecosystem. I just want to talk about a few things going on. Scrolling along the bottom, with the link will be up shortly, is the Peer Guidance Osler office hours. Any Tuesday coming up, starting, the 14th, the 21st, 28th, for the rest of the May. Come in, check it out. Free business advice. You'll be able to sit down with anybody that you want, and we'll be giving you that advice. Also tomorrow, the Startup TNT Top 20. Be 250 people here. I'm shooting that platform today, so come on down, see some of the great things that are happening. But more important, come meet somebody new. Speaking of somebody new, this is how I met these guys at platform. Garlon, Yassen, how are you today?
Doing good, Jay. Doing good. We actually met at the last Startup TNT Top 20 night.
There we go. Oh, right. See, at platform. So I was right. Like,
that's right.
I'm wrong a lot, but I was right there. But again, that's where you meet people, right? it's been great for we've turned this into a friendship. We've had a lot of conversations. You guys are doing some great things across, and I really want to get into that, because I think this is going to be a fantastic discussion about artificial intelligence. So I love founding stories. I love finding out how you guys met and things along those lines. So why don't we start off with how you met and how that turned into founding Luniko?
Yeah, so Garlon and I met working at an energy company, right? He was a co-op student. I was a summer student. He was in knowledge management. I was in health and safety. But we just kind of had, those people that you just immediately connect with, right? Garlon and I kind of immediately connected, and we both just like solving problems and adding value. And we started kind of doing some things at work. We started doing some things on our spare time. Some things were successful. Some things were not successful. And, the rest is history.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. Yass and I, we are both problem solvers, and we were both ambitious. And I think we recognized that in each other. And it's like, oh, I need to be this guy's friend, because I know he's going to go far, and hopefully I can ride his coattails. No, but all jokes aside, yeah, Yass and I have been able to work together and build some pretty cool things, Luniko consulting included, and now we're onto our next big pivot as we see the direction that AI is going. And yeah, we're excited to share that story with you.
And in terms of founding Luniko, right? So I initially founded Luniko just to be a contractor on a job, right? A business analyst on an SAP implementation. There was no grand plan of this will be a management consulting firm one day, this will become a technology firm one day. It didn't even have a name, right? I spent a year trying to get Garlon to quit his job, his nice, cushy oil and gas job, right? Very safe, to come join a management consulting firm at the time, right? And it just kind of grew from there, right? We've always been good at seeing opportunities for improvement. We saw them on data, on business process, on analytics, and, brought an initial team. And before you know it, we were doing digital transformations in energy, aerospace, manufacturing, right here in Canada and globally as well.
Well, let's talk about that. Because I love that, right? The fear. Let's talk with you first, Garlon, on that. Like, to leave that comfort zone. A lot of that's something that entrepreneurs struggle with. They're maybe doing something as the side of the desk, and then all of a sudden they have to all right, you know what? It's time for me to make that jump. I believe in this. I believe in Yaz. I believe in Luniko. Walk us through that kind of mindset and your decision.
I actually have a pretty interesting story. We have quite a bit of a contrast. Right. And Yas is smiling because he knows what I'm talking about. Coming out of university, I had a pretty good idea. I wanted to do startup related things. I had this entrepreneurial itch that I had to scratch. And at the time when I was working at the oil and gas job, I was lucky enough to work there part-time and work on a different startup part-time. So at the time VR was just taking off. And, there were so many business ideas. It was basically the Wild West. People were making video games. People were making training applications. People were making different experiences for marketing. And I worked with a few other founders to create a VR real estate company that essentially visualized different high rises. You could click a button and change what the floors look like outside, change the wall colors, change the furniture to increase that buying temperature. And that was pretty stressful for me. Despite, having an oil and gas shop, I just got really, really burnt out. And from there, we kind of made a decision. So, you know what, this business model doesn't work, or it didn't work for us. And so I said, okay, maybe that's my entrepreneurial itch scratch. I'm gonna climb the corporate ladder. And when I had met Yas is a corporate guy. He's like, I'm gonna climb that ladder. I'm gonna, you know, move my way up, and I'm gonna have that cushy job. And as I move up, I'll make more money. And Yas was always trying to convince me to climb that corporate ladder, and I was always trying to convince Yas, why not do the entrepreneurial thing? Get that freedom. You get to explore different ideas and do cool things. And then we both did kind of a switch. I went back to say, you know what, maybe the entrepreneurial thing is just too stressful. It's not for me. And Yas ended up climbing up the corporate ladder. Like, you know what, that's not for me. And so he went down the entrepreneurial route. So yeah, that was kind of how that was just a funny story in terms of how we had a 180. But basically I had this fear, or not fear, but this idea of what startups were coming out of that. And Yas then had to take 4 months to convince me to dive back into that route, or into that swim lane, to to explore Luniko with them. And it was scary, but I would not change that decision at all.
No, I love that story. I mean, and I think that's and founders don't share their founding stories, or how they met stories enough, in my opinion, because I think that's a really big part of success, rather than just saying, "Oh, hey, do you want to do this? You want to do this?" It took a little while for you guys to come together. You worked for Luniko, and now you're like, okay, we're going to take this to a next level. We're going to bring some. We're going to focus on AI, little artificial intelligence. But the one thing that everybody's talking about it. But there's also a lot of talk out there that's maybe, I don't want to say fear-based, or maybe misunderstood. So why don't you talk a little bit about the mindset of, whether it's a business in AI, or people in general, of accepting it?
Yeah, I think that people are, fearful to things that are new, right? Especially things that rapidly evolve. And artificial intelligence has been around for a long time, but
Yeah.
the last year it really has exploded in terms of capabilities, and it's difficult to keep up, right? It's very difficult to keep up, and that introduces a lot of fear, right? Uncertainty, ambiguity, and I mean, I think the mindset that people have to take is that this isn't going to go anywhere. And that's just the truth, right? It's kind of like the internet. People were afraid of the internet. People weren't sure what the internet was. People didn't understand the value of it when it came out, but it wasn't going to go away anytime soon. So the best thing that you can do is really embrace it, and really take it with what I refer to as a beginner's mindset, right? So things evolve so quickly, right? Every single day we're seeing new tools, new applications. The models are getting better. They're doing more things. And if you go into things with a mindset that like, there's certain things I have to learn and that's it, right? And there's an end to this. And, you're going to get left behind very quickly. But if you take a beginner's mindset that's like, okay, I may know more things today than I did yesterday, but there's new applications, new ways to do things, and I have to really expand my thinking. I think you'll be able to adapt a lot better. You'll be more comfortable with that uncertainty. You'll be more comfortable with that ambiguity. You'll get a better pulse on how the technology will start to evolve. And you'll start to see that you can kind of become one with AI, if you will, bit by bit.
Garlon, you have anything to add to that?
I'll just say that I've had to go through that paradigm shift as well. When you first hear about AI, or at least recently, it's all about ChatGPT. You try it once and it's like, oh, put in some simple question, you get a simple response. And then I think it's pretty easy for someone to write off as, oh, it's not that good. But the paradigm shift that I had, that Yass had to kind of hammer into me, it's like, it can probably do most of the things. You just have to know how to ask it to do it. So you have to assume you know nothing and keep asking it questions, kind of like a 5-year-old. Okay, why is this? Okay, how does that work? And and continue to build that knowledge and conversation. But yeah, it's that mindset shift is one of the most important things, I would say, for someone to really kind of incorporate AI into, or leverage AI and extend their own capabilities.
So I guess before we get into your platform and what it does, I just have one more question based on that. Are you doing a lot of education based on that, AI, what it is, how it can affect it, how it can help you, with businesses right now?
Education has always been a big part of our job, right? So as management consultants, before we pivoted into being a technology startup, it was one of the biggest part of our jobs, right? We were doing a lot of digital transformations, and in digital transformations, they're difficult, and you have to educate everybody on why they're important, how they connect to the larger objectives, right? How different roles connect to one another, how different teams should sort of collaborate, how you execute certain parts of different projects. And if you lead with education, we found that you tend to be a lot more successful. There tends to be a lot more buy-in from people, and you overall just see this team of people come together to really transform an organization. And doing it with AI, it's you even have to start earlier on with the education, and you have to start with things like AI 101, some of the basics. What is it? How do they work, right? Like, how is it different than some of the other technologies? Because when you say those two letters, AI, they mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people.
Oh, man. No, I agree. So I think that dives right into my next question for you guys is actually, how does that work? How have, with this pivot into AI that you've taken, how can you help companies, with AI to be, whether it be more efficient, save money, please share, how your platform works.
Yeah, so I'll start by, first of all, talking a little bit about the problem that our platform is looking to solve. So digital transformation is a $2.3 trillion market, right, which is expected to grow to almost $4 trillion in the next 3 to 5 years. Companies spend an average of $27 million US per digital transformation project, and with good reason, right? It promises to integrate technology, to grow revenue, reduce costs, improve efficiency, all the things that businesses want to be able to do. Here's the problem, though. The majority of those projects fail. The number that's thrown around there by McKinsey is around 70% of those projects lead to, unhappy customers. Now, there's many reasons why they fail, but mostly they boil down to a lack of emphasis on the human elements, such as the change management, the education that we just talked about, right? The alignment, the training, those sorts of components. Now, we've had a high success rate as a consulting firm with our digital transformations, and it hasn't been easy. I used to have hair before I started, right? To kind of give you a little bit of context, but really there's so much work that needs to be done in a digital transformation. There's so many moving pieces. It's like this massive jigsaw puzzle where everything has to kind of come together. And the human element is never the same in the two companies. Planning and budgeting and presentations and documentation and training, all of that stuff tends to be similar across various projects, but the human element is never the same. Even within one company, in different departments, different teams, it always changes. So it's very difficult to work with. So we have built a software that really solves that. And what our platform does is it executes a lot of the complicated workflows that are needed to be done to run a successful digital transformation. Things like planning, things like research, things like analysis, right? And it generates a lot of the documentation and does a lot of the work that a human doesn't need to do. things like plans, things like budgets, things like presentations, things like work instructions. All of that is generated for you specifically to the customer that you're working with, to the company, to the industry. It's personalized for you, right? So what that does is that allows the human to spend less time on the monotonous tasks, like building a project plan and a schedule and a resourcing, all of that, and to spend more time on those human elements, the education, right? The problem solving, the change management, the alignment. And it's all packaged into a friendly UI, right? It's really a combination of AI, robotics process automation, data analytics, and good business process all into one.
Garlon, anything to add?
I think I couldn't have said it any better. Or Yas couldn't have said it any better. So.
So when you're walking into, again, for anybody that's out there listening, it's alive. If you have any questions, please put them into LinkedIn or on the chat. If you want to visit the Luniko's website, it's in the comment section. Just click on the link, lunikoconsulting.com. So what's usually the first process? Walk me through. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't matter what industry, so to say, but you're gonna walk in and what's that kind of first conversation that you have with the client and how it goes to talk about transforming their business.
Well, it always starts with the why, right? Why are you doing this to begin with, right? What's the strategy that you're trying to drive? What are the objectives that you're trying to meet? What are your stakeholder expectations that you're hoping to exceed, right? So it's very important for us to understand that, because a company that wants to grow revenue as their number one objective versus a company that wants to reduce costs as their number one objective, right? Like, it really changes how you approach both of those things. So we need to understand the strategy, the why behind things. We need to get a good understanding of the problems that an organization is faced with as well, right? What are the challenges that are preventing you or that could prevent you from reaching those objectives, and really helping define that, right? And then also, like, what is the company, right? Once we understand the why, then we need to really figure out, like, what does the company do, right? What is its strengths? What is its weaknesses, right? What are the things that are unique? What is the value proposition to the market? What, like I said, challenges, opportunities, all those sorts of things. And then really what we try to do is create what I will refer to as the company DNA, right? And when we can generate that company DNA, right, it allows us to really tailor the experience, tailor the deliverables, the planning, the research, the analysis, all of the stuff that our software is able to do specifically to that client. And there are times when we can get very, very granular, right? When we'll want to understand, like, the experience of the project manager or the business analyst who's going to be executing certain tasks. Because if they're very experienced in a task, like, let's say, I don't know, data conversion, right, as part of a system implementation, and really changing data, the structure of the data from the old system to match the new system so it can kind of work, essentially. If they've done it 100 times, then great. We don't really need to guide them very much. But if they've never done it, there's a lot of things that they can do to really screw things up. So we have to make sure that we put extra emphasis and extra care, and that we develop clear work instructions for that person. And so it's about really understanding that, and then, yeah, really unleashing the power of AI to do the rest.
I think that's such a great answer, and it's a great description of how it works. There's been David Daigle here has a question, and I want to ask this. I'm just going to ask it right now because I wanted to get to this eventually, but what size of business is good for your solution? Because we've talked about startups that they're maybe they're not ready for it, or maybe it's a scale up that's ready for it, or is it a more established business that's kind of farther down the road? Thank you, David, for that question.
Oh, geez, I can't say that I really know a very good answer for that. And it's probably one of the things that we've been struggling with as an organization, is that when you look at digital transformation, this is something that fits the bill for anybody. Right? Now, some are better are going to be more likely to pick it up faster. I think that really big organizations have a lot of bureaucracy and have a lot of things that kind of slow things down when it comes to artificial intelligence, a lot of processes that they have to kind of go through. What I would say, I think the best organizations that can have the largest impacts the quickest are going to be those that can make quick decisions on which technology to integrate and where, and are willing to explore and are willing to be iterative, right? And not where version 1 of whatever new AI process that they've generated to, I don't know, automate a certain workflow is perfect on day 1, but one where it's good on day 1 and it builds on itself, or on the backs of the team week by week, month over month, right? And so it's hard for me to say how the size of industry and whatnot, right? I can tell you that our previous customers as management consulting firms are probably a little bit too big, right? Things will take a couple of years to really transform. We used our tool to really transform our business initially, right? When we actually created this software, we weren't going out, we didn't do this to become a technology company. We integrated AI into our business to become a better management consulting firm. It was only after that we created that we're like, holy shit, maybe we really should be becoming a technology company and selling this product or software as a service. And we were able to very quickly transform and automate so many elements of our consulting. And that's because we had the right team, we had the right mindset, we were willing to explore, we were willing to take risks, we were willing to see what worked and what didn't work. And we were pleasantly happy and surprised with the results. So I think that if you want quick results, you really want to transform your business very quickly, you've got to have at least some of those ingredients in place.
Well, I think you said something very important there. And I think a lot of the best ideas come from, solving something internally. You're like, oh shit, I'm going to do this and it's going to help our business become better. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this is something that we can monetize. This is something that we can drive. This is something that we can help people with. So I guess at what point did you say, I want to do this? Like where was that aha moment to saying that I'm going to take this into a technology company and I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to learn? And I love that the fact that you said we put it out there, we learned, we saw what the ecosystem or our clients wanted, and then there was something here.
I would say probably when we built our first prototype, right? I think that when it became a little bit more easy to see what it was, and we saw how straightforward it could be and how much value it could add and how quickly, and how much it changed our business, right? Like we had this idea of like, okay, if we introduce AI, maybe it's going to make us, I don't know, 40 to 50% more efficient. But when we did it ourselves on our business and our processes, we saw those numbers were much, much higher than that. And that's where we said, well, geez, if every business could get a fraction of this in, even a much longer time, I think that we'd just be in a much better place economically as a country and whatnot, right? And that was where we said, okay, we really should shift our focus from just using it ourselves internally to consult other businesses, which we're still happy to do, of course, but really shift our full attention to being this technology platform that we can offer that platform to as many businesses, to as many consultants if you want, right? All our competition can have access to this so that they can help transform those businesses.
No, I think that's great. And I have another question here. So I'm going to get this because, again, I don't know if people just out there, maybe it's the AI, maybe they're thinking like me and have all these questions. Maybe they know right through osmosis here. But, thanks for the question, Steve. But what sectors are in most need of digital transformation?
I think that I look at sectors like manufacturing as an example. I think that there's a lot of opportunities from a digital transformation there. Obviously, we do a lot of work here in Alberta, right? So the work that we do here in Alberta when it comes to energy, I think that there's a lot of opportunities there. There's a lot of activity going on when it comes to digital transformation, but I think that we're far away from what the potential with today's technology is in terms of running a lean business and an effective and efficient organization. It's hard for me to say which one, Steve, because to be honest, like this is applicable to any industry. I think that those that can benefit the fastest are going to be the ones that have a heavy administrative burden, where there's these, I'm going to call them these workflows, right? Where like one person takes some data, gives it to somebody else, they do something with it, gives it to somebody else, does some sort of report, right? Passes it on to somebody else, analyzes it, gives it to somebody else to do some sort of plan, right? Like you have these administrative processes where there's many different layers of people involved. Every time that you pass it on to somebody else, right, the clock starts again in terms of the activity that happens. And by the time you see an end-to-end process, there's a lot of people involved and there's a lot of timing involved in there. What we've seen is actually artificial intelligence can really be introduced to all those elements to automate those processes, make them a lot more efficient. And I think that that's where the low-hanging fruit really is, to be able to have significant improvements on your business processes. But really, it's going to be every industry. And in 5 to 10 years, we'll be looking back at this conversation and we'll just be seeing like, okay, yeah, this was for everybody and everything. Just like right now, you start a business, you don't even think about the internet. You don't even think about whether you should have a website or not. It's something that's ingrained. Well, whether you should have systems or not, like that's something that's just ingrained into how you do things.
Yeah, and to elaborate on what Yass is saying too, so maybe don't think of it so much from an industry standpoint, or you can think of it from an industry standpoint if the industry, I think, is heavily focused on these long, complex processes. But I think the better way to think about it is like from almost a task basis, right? If it's a task that has a lot of administrative work, or you're required to crunch a lot of data, that's kind of where AI can do a lot of the heavy lifting, at least come up with the first iteration for the human to review and to, build on top of what that AI had started.
Well, I think that's a great point, right? And I think that is the future as well. Speaking of the future, what's next for Luniko?
Well, for us, we are right now involved in the Alberta Catalyzer program. We're about to kind of finish that up, right? Which has been awesome. Shout out to Alberta Innovates. Shout out to Platform Calgary. Shout out to Edmonton Unlimited, right? We've had a blast on that program. We've grown. We've learned a lot through that as well. For us, it's really a focus on the technology side, right? So we've been a consulting firm for a while. We're going to still consult for a little bit, but really try to minimize that. We're about to launch our first flagship product, right? Which is really going to help automate a lot of the work in digital transformation, as we were kind of talking about. And it's, available to small businesses all the way to kind of large organizations and many different, it's industry agnostic, right? So yeah, we're going to be launching that. We're going to be launching that next week, right? So keep an eye out for that, right? And we're going to see kind of where that goes, right? We'll be at Smart MTX next week also, right? The Smart Manufacturing Technology Conference here in Red Deer. If there's anybody there that wants to come chat and see what this kind of hype looks like in practice. And I think that as time goes by, it's going to be slowly transition away from being a consulting services company and really transform more into being that technology platform and only player there.
We're working on our glow up is essentially what Yass is saying.
Oh, I love that, right? I mean, and again, for those people, keep an eye, put it in your calendars, go check out lunikoconsulting.com, click on the link in the comment section, take you directly there and seeing what they're doing, because it's pretty freaking cool. I'm always sad when these conversations are coming to an end, because we could talk forever, about this. And, but I mean, you guys, as seasoned veteran entrepreneurs, I'm excited to learn your answer here about advice. And again, this is probably one of my favorite parts of the show because I mean, there's just so many great things that have happened in 330-ish episodes. So we'll start with you, Garlon. If you had one piece of advice for a startup or entrepreneur, what would that be?
Oof. I'm gonna say I'm gonna direct it back to sort of using AI to extend your capabilities. Um, as an entrepreneur, you have so many tasks on hand. You're wearing so many different hats, and you're trying to squeeze more hours out of the day, right? With AI tools growing so fast and the capabilities, I would strongly suggest, like, keeping your ear to the ground to see what other tools are out there that can just buy you a few more hours out of a week or out of a month, right? And with AI, it'll do so much of the heavy lifting for you that it really might be a bit of a game changer just to even give you perhaps that work-life balance back. And the mindset going into some of these things, it's like, if the first go around the quality of whatever the AI generates or the output isn't good enough, I would say take the mindset of innocent until proven guilty, right? Go through those iterations, and instead of assuming that the AI is not going to do a good job, let it prove to you that, hey, maybe the technology isn't exactly there just yet for that one specific application. So be open-minded, and explore what applications are out there just to see how it can perhaps buy you a bit more time or give you some time back.
I love it. That's my first out of all the advice. That's my first use AI advice. So there is a first right now. Woo!
Awesome.
Yaz, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I would obviously say the same thing as Garland, right? I think that's the number one thing that you should do, but I'll add something completely different. And I think, in addition to being curious and exploration, right, be willing to fail and learn, right? I think that's the most important thing, right? If you see the most successful entrepreneurs, it's not necessarily they hit the jackpot right away. It's because they consistently learn. They got better every time. They improved things over and over and over. And one of the quotes that really stuck with me very early in my career, back to maintenance excellence, right, in oil and gas, was that yesterday's excellence is today's standard and tomorrow's mediocrity. Basically, this concept of continuous improvement, and that's been a constant for Garland and I and everybody that works at Luniko, right? It's like, okay, what did you learn today, right? How did you grow? How did you get better, right? How did you improve your processes, your systems, your knowledge, your understanding, whatever that is. And as time goes by, as an entrepreneur, all of that will pay off, because you're not betting on an idea, you're not betting on a problem, you're not betting on a solution, you're betting on yourself to grow. And the more you grow, or the more you learn, as my kids like to say, the more you learn, the more you earn. Don't know where they got that, but hey, 6-year-olds, I don't know where they come up with half the things they come up with, but there you go.
I have no idea where they come up with some of these sayings. They're great sayings. I love them. Well, again, guys, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your knowledge, sharing your story. We're excited about the launch next week. Again, anybody, just check out their website, lunikoconsulting.com. Click on it in the website, on the comment section. And again, anybody needs any of that help, needs anything, the email to book an appointment with Pure Guidance or Osler is in the comment section as well. And hopefully we will see a ton of you tomorrow at the Startup TNT Top 20. And more important about learning about these companies is meeting somebody new, connecting, networking. You never know who you're going to run into or who you're going to talk to. So again, gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and time today. And I'm already excited about our next conversation.
Thank you, Jade. Thank you for
Likewise,
having
Jade.
us.
All right. I hope everybody enjoys their Wednesday.